In the town of Agra, there lived a very rich businessman. However, he was also very stingy and never liked to give money or help to others. Many people would come to his house every day, hoping for some kindness or assistance, but they always left disappointed. The rich man had a habit of making false promises. He would tell people that he would help them, but then he would forget or pretend that he never made such promises. This behavior made him known as a miserly and untrustworthy person. One day, a poet named Raidas came to the rich man's house. Raidas was known for his beautiful poems and had heard that the rich man loved poetry. So, he decided to visit him and share his work. When Raidas arrived at the rich man's house, he was welcomed warmly because of his love for poetry. The rich man invited Raidas in and asked him to read some of his poems. Raidas happily agreed and began to recite several of his compositions. The rich man listened carefully and was especially pleased with one poem that compared him to Kuber, the god of wealth in Hindu mythology. In those days, it was customary for wealthy individuals and kings to show their appreciation for poets by giving them gifts or money. Since this was often the only way poets could earn a living. Encouraged by the rich man's positive reaction, Raidas continued reading more poems. After finishing his recitation, the rich man praised Raidas' talent and promised him some gifts as a token of appreciation. He asked Raidas to return the next day to collect these gifts. Raidas left the house feeling pleased and hopeful about receiving the promised rewards. However, when he returned the next morning, things took an unexpected turn. The rich man pretended not to recognize him or remember their previous encounter. When Raidas reminded him about the promised gifts, the rich man responded coldly. He told Raidas that although he was indeed a good poet, he understood very little about human nature. According to the rich man, if he truly intended to reward Raidas, he would have done so immediately after hearing his poems that night. Feeling deceived and upset, Raidas realized there was nothing more he could do but leave quietly. On his way home from this disappointing encounter, he met Birbal riding a horse. Birbal was one of Emperor Akbar's most trusted advisors and was renowned for his wisdom and cleverness. Raidas stopped Birbal and told him everything that had happened with the rich man. Birbal listened carefully and then invited Raidas to come with him so they could think of a plan together. At Birbal's house, they sat down to figure out how to teach the rich man a lesson without causing harm or resorting to unethical means. After some thought, Birbal came up with an ingenious plan. Birbal told Raidas to go to a trustworthy friend named Midas with 5 gold coins and ask him to host a dinner party on the upcoming full moon night. The plan included inviting the rich man under false pretense, telling him that food would be served in gold vessels which guests could keep after eating. Raidas followed Birbal's instructions precisely. He went to Midas' house with the gold coins and explained everything in detail. Midas agreed to help out and promised to carry out their plan meticulously. The next day, Midas visited the rich man's house and extended an invitation for dinner on the full moon night, under the guise of serving food in gold vessels that guests could take home afterward. The rich man was thrilled at this prospect. Gold vessels were something he had always coveted, and eagerly accepted the invitation. On the full moon night, as planned, the rich man arrived at Midas' house dressed in his finest attire and ready for what he believed would be an extravagant feast served in gold vessels. However, upon arrival, he found no other guests except for Raidas. Despite this unexpected turn of events, they welcomed him warmly and engaged in polite conversation while waiting for dinner time. Unbeknownst to the rich man, both Raidas and Midas had already eaten before his arrival. As the night wore on, the rich man grew hungrier by the minute. He had come expecting a grand feast served in gold vessels. but there was no sign of food or any preparations for dinner. Despite his growing hunger, he tried to maintain a polite demeanor. Finally, at midnight, the rich man could no longer bear his hunger and asked Midas when they would be serving dinner. Midas acted surprised and asked what food he was talking about. The rich man reminded him of the invitation and the promise of gold vessels. Midas then stepped in and asked the rich man for proof of the invitation. The rich man realized he had no evidence to support his claim because it was all based on false pretense. Midas explained that he had only invited him out of kindness and did not mean it seriously. He added that even though they did not do anything good for other people, they also would never try to hurt another human being. Midas told the rich man not to feel bad about it. At this point, Birbal walked into the room. He had been watching from a distance, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Birbal reminded the rich man of how he had treated Midas similarly by making false promises and then pretending not to remember them. The rich man realized his mistake and felt ashamed. He understood that he had been treated exactly as he had treated others. Promised something without any intention of keeping the promise. Feeling deeply sorry for his actions, the rich man begged for forgiveness from Midas. He acknowledged that Midas was a good poet who had not asked for any reward but had been cheated out of one nonetheless. To make up for his mistake, the rich man took off the expensive necklace he was wearing and gifted it to Midas as a token of apology and appreciation. After this heartfelt apology and gesture, they all sat down together to share a meal. Although it was late at night, Midas arranged for some food to be prepared so they could eat together in harmony. Midas was all praise for Birbal's wisdom and thanked him profusely for helping him teach the rich man a valuable lesson about honesty and kindness. This story eventually reached Emperor Akbar's ears, who was impressed by Birbal's cleverness and wisdom in handling the situation without causing harm or conflict. As a result, Emperor Akbar invited Midas to his court and honored him with recognition and rewards. Birbal's reputation as a wise advisor continued to grow, and his stories became legendary examples of how wisdom and cleverness can resolve complex issues in a just and fair manner. And so, the rich man learned an important lesson about keeping promises and treating others with kindness and respect, a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his life.